get your butt in your chair at 9 a.m. and let's treat Monday like any other day.
I mean, I've heard of a case of the Mondays, but it's got its own movements among employees.
Right? Yes. There's the whole movement on TikTok and elsewhere where employees post videos of themselves lighting candles, taking it easy on themselves, and telling themselves not to go too crazy on a Monday.
But before the pandemic, Monday was the day when a lot of departments would get people together and map out the plan for the week. Why do a lot of workers feel differently now?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Monday was the day when it wasn't all that strange or bizarre to get in an office meeting and sort of plan the week, and managers are saying, what's the big deal? That this is something that is not unusual for us to want to map out the week, get our goals, and we've written a lot about burnout and employees saying that we need to be treated as adults, and the work is going to get done, but it's going to get done at the pace that we want it to get done. So it's this conflict now that we're seeing in workplaces all over the country.
Now, you've spoken to managers in specific situations who've asked their workers to come in on Mondays. How'd that go over?
Not very well. There was an example in the story of a company in Philadelphia. It was an economic development company, and the manager said to his employees, look, we got to show the flag. We got to show that, like, we're here in the office and supporting businesses around us. And he chose Monday in particular as the day when he wanted to see everyone and meet. And the younger employees really resisted this idea, and finally they came to a truce where they agreed to have their planning meeting every other Monday. But it's also where people are in their walks of life, right? Some people who have like small children or a lot of responsibilities at home may feel more strongly about wanting to have that flexibility. Others who are at a phase of life where they want to be out and about and more social might also feel more strongly that the office is a good place for them.
And managers might want people in the office, but at the end of the day, the work has to get done regardless of where someone's desk is. Is there room for compromise here?
Friday has been the day that like everybody kind of agrees on not to touch. So we might be seeing more, if you don't agree to this, we're gonna take away Fridays, and that could be something that, well, everybody agrees on. We all want our Fridays.
So what could cause some companies to become more strict about workers coming in on Mondays?
Yeah, so more Monday office mandates could be ahead if the economy falters and workers start worrying about job security. So employers might start to use that as an opportunity to be more strict on the number of days spent in the office. So if a company, for instance, goes from 3 days a week to 4 days, there's a good chance that Mondays would be that increased day.
All right, that's Wall Street Journal contributor Anne-Marie Chaker. And that's your Money Briefing. I'm J.R. Whalen for the Wall Street Journal.
This episode of Crime Junkie is brought to you by State Farm. Insurance can be confusing sometimes. That's why State Farm is there for your what-ifs, because they know the rest of your life is already full of thinking about other things, like what if your life was a playlist? Imagine how crazy it would be. Your first song might be a noisy track called Kids. The second one, a spooky track called Home Ownership. Then like 100 more songs called Work, Health, Pets, Cars, Yard Work. The playlist goes on. And once you put it on repeat and add shuffle mode, things might not sound all that jazzy. That's why the last track you want to add to your life's playlist is called Insurance Uncertainties, with lyrics like, what if I'd like to add coverage to my policy? What if I had a question at 3 a.m.? Well, there are some positive notes that can help keep your life in harmony. You can file a claim on the State Farm mobile app, talk to a real person, including your agent, and you can call day or night about insurance coverage and policy questions. Because that's just what they do. So no matter how noisy your life may get, insurance can still be music to your ears. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or go to statefarm.com for a quote today.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. The best part is that it's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You can start today by filling out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and If you need to, switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Visit betterhelp.com/crimejunkie today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/crimejunkie.
Hi, Crime Junkies. I'm your host, Ashley Flowers.
And I'm Britt.
And the story I have for you today is about two women who were strangers in life, but who, despite disappearing decades apart, formed a kind of sisterhood in death. It's also about the families who refuse to let their stories be buried. These are the stories of Pamela Butler and Marta Rodriguez. It's late Saturday afternoon in Washington, D.C., and Thelma Butler is waiting for her daughter Pamela, who everyone calls Pam. She's supposed to pick her up for a dinner date. Pam and her new boyfriend, Jose, are supposed to be taking Thelma to this D.C. staple called Ben's Chili Bowl for an early bird special. But as the clock hits 3 and then ticks past, there's no sign of them. Thelma waits patiently at first, then maybe a little less so, but still, no Pam, no Jose. And as the early darkness of winter starts to creep in, Thelma's confusion gives way to concern. Pam wouldn't leave her hanging like this, especially not today, on Valentine's Day. In fact, when Thelma realized their plans were on Valentine's Day, she even double-checked with Pam to make sure she wouldn't rather spend it alone with Jose. But Thelma's a widow, and Pam told her mom that she wanted to take her out on Valentine's Day. I mean, that's the kind of daughter she is. And if some last-minute issue popped up, she would have called. Thelma is certain of that. So she picks up her phone, dials Pam's home number, but no answer. She dials her cell, again, no answer. And with every ring, her anxiety is growing. So Thelma calls her son, Derek, Pam's brother, hoping maybe he's spoken to her. Now, when he picks up, he says that he hasn't heard from her either. But he thinks his mom is probably overreacting. Like, sure, Pam's usually punctual and conscientious. She's your classic type A personality, but this is her first Valentine's Day with Jose. They've only been dating since September. And that early kind of romance can make anyone a little distracted, a little selfish even. Besides, what's Thelma gonna do? File a police report on her 47-year-old daughter for missing a dinner date?
And what year is this happening in?
2009.
Oh, yeah, I can hear that call now. Hello, officer. I'd like to report a crime. My fully grown-up, independent, 47-year-old adult daughter stood me up for dinner. Good luck getting the police on that case.
Yeah, that's what she's thinking. So Thelma tries not to worry. If Derek is not concerned, maybe she shouldn't be either. She'll try again tomorrow. But when she still can't get a hold of Pam the next day after church, that nagging feeling is back. Now, Derek's still sure she's fine, but sometimes a mom just knows.
Does Thelma try to get a hold of Jose? See if he knows anything?
You know, I don't know that she has Jose's number. Like, I know they've been introduced. Pam brought him to the family's Thanksgiving dinner, maybe a few other holiday gatherings, but it seems like she doesn't know him all that well. Which I think an armchair detective can overanalyze, but literally, I consider myself a well-seasoned crime junkie, and a few months ago, I was losing it because I couldn't get a hold of my sister, and I realized that the guy that she had been dating for like months at that point, I had zero way to get a hold of him. No number, no social media. I was convinced he killed her. Spoiler alert, he didn't. And now I have all of his info, but the point being, it's actually not that weird to me. Though, safety note to all, even if a relationship is new, get the info. Promise not to be a weirdo and text and call their new beau, but like, new crime junkie rule. Get the info. Anyway, when Tuesday rolls around and there's still no word from Pam, Thelma decides she's waited long enough. According to an episode of Dateline that aired in 2022, she asks her 19-year-old grandson, Brandon, to go to his Aunt Pam's house with her to see if she's there, see if anything's up. And she wants Brandon there for a couple of reasons. One, if she's being honest with herself, she's scared of what she's gonna find. But two, Brandon actually lived with his Aunt Pam recently, so he's still got a key to the house and the alarm code.
Are they actually expecting Pam to be home, though? I'd assume Pam probably has a job and would be at work on Tuesday.
Well, good question. I mean, it is a normal work week. She should be at work, but yesterday was President's Day, and she had planned to take off that Tuesday to give herself like a long weekend. So they're thinking,
Oh, so this week at least, she should be home.
right. But if she's home, why isn't she answering her phone or calling her mom? When Thelma and Brandon get there, they immediately start noticing red flags. Like there's mail piled up on the front porch. And even though the front door is locked, when Brandon unlocks it, they realize the alarm's not set. But there's no sign of Pam, and she wouldn't leave the house unarmed. Looking around the first floor, Thelma sees the shades on the dining room window are raised from the bottom. And I'm sure you're asking, like, so what? But apparently these shades can be lowered from the top or the bottom. I didn't know such a thing existed. You learn new things every day. But apparently Pam only lowers them from the top. She doesn't want her neighbors peeking in.
But she could have just been rushing around that morning, skipped some things in her normal routine.
Yeah, maybe that morning, but then if everything's fine, why has she been MIA before this?
True.
So as they keep going through the house, they look closer at the dining room window, the same one with the wonky shade, and they realize that window is unlocked. Pam would never leave her house unarmed, but leaving a window unlocked on the first floor of the house, like, completely out of the question. So that's red flag, 4 or 5? And Britt, it just keeps getting worse the further they go into the house. I mean, the house is kind of a mess. In Pam's office, papers are even strewn all over, which for Pam, who Thelma lovingly calls a clean freak to the Washington Post, is even more cause for concern. And something else that stands out to them is this note that they find in her office. It's from Jose in what they assume to be his handwriting, and it says that he stopped by. It's not dated or anything, so who knows how recent it is.
I mean, what are the odds it's from any other time, though? It sounds like Jose hasn't seen her either.
Exactly. So they keep making their way through the house. When they get upstairs, they see something that would give any crime junkie full-body chills. Pam's bed is stripped down to the mattress. The pillows and comforter are piled on the bedroom sofa, not folded or stacked, just piled. But it's what's not in that pile that stands out even more. The sheets. Thelma and Brandon scour the house, top to bottom. Those sheets aren't anywhere.
And they're sure the sheets aren't just being washed, like still in the dryer or something?
No, they are sure. And apparently, Pam's not the kind of person who would even leave her bed stripped. She'd either put on clean sheets while she was washing the dirty ones, or she'd put the dirty ones back on as soon as they were clean. And again, they're not like being clean. They check the washer. What she wouldn't do is wash the dirty sheets and then put them away in the linen closet, like with the bed unmade.
Okay, not a good feeling with the bed sheets missing, but what about, like, the usual things we're looking for? Her keys, her car, purse, belongings, stuff like that.
Well, according to reporting in the Washington Post by Paul Duggan, her keys are gone. Same with her cell phone. But both of her cars are in the driveway and garage. And Pam drives everywhere. So, again, the thing is, if she's not there, one of those cars shouldn't be here either.
Right.
Now, nothing of value seems to be missing other than whatever cash and cards were in her wallet. So none of this is adding up. By this point, Thelma and Brandon aren't even pretending to worry about Pam's privacy. They are rifling through cabinets, flipping over cushions, and they've got zero hesitation about listening to Pam's voicemail. But when they hit play on the answering machine, they hear Jose's voice, and their stomachs drop.
Hey, it's Laura Coates, host of The Laura Coates Show on SiriusXM POTUS, where we go beyond the soundbite. We break down everything, politics and the law and pop culture. It's what you care most about. Listen to The Laura Coates Show at home or anywhere you are. No car required. Download the SiriusXM app for over 425 channels of ad-free music, sports, entertainment, and more. Subscribe now and get 3 months free. Offer details apply.
From the voicemail, it sounds It's from the past few days when no one's been able to get a hold of her.
So there's no hope that they just rode off into the sunset together?
No. So by this point, Velma is ready to report Pam missing. But just to be super sure before she does, she calls Pam's office. Maybe she changed her mind about working that day. I mean, it wouldn't explain literally anything they found in the house, why she's been MIA, but Velma is desperate, right? And when a staffer tells her that Pam didn't come in that day, that's it. Velma calls Derek to tell him to get over to Pam's right away. And it's not long before they're calling police. While they're waiting, Brandon hops on Pam's computer because her family knows that she's got security cameras. And as that episode of Dateline shows, they don't just aim toward the front door. They cover almost the entire exterior of the house.
Oh my god, I love this.
I know, right? I mean, these are just ads, you guys. When we tell you to get a security system, we mean it from the bottom of our paranoid heart.
Truly.
Get the system, add on the cameras. But honestly, it's kind of wild that she has all of this, because I know it's pretty common for people to have, I mean, these days, like ring doorbells. Again, you get the cameras with your security systems. It's kind of the minimum at this point, but keep in mind, again, we're in 2009, so most people don't have a home security system with cameras. But our girl Pam does. However, there's a problem. Even though the cameras cover almost the whole exterior of the house, you know the one place they don't cover?
That side with that open window.
Yep.
That feels way too convenient for me.
Same. But they still want to see if there's anything else on the footage. So Brandon pulls up the past 6 days of security footage and starts scanning through it, because it should be a roadmap to Pam's disappearance. I mean, the front door and the back door are both covered, and that's what really matters, right? But what he sees is strange, to say the least. Here's the rundown. So Pam gets home from work the evening of Thursday, February 12th, and Jose is already waiting to be let inside. On Friday, a hand is seen reaching out the front door to grab the mail, and Pam doesn't leave the house Friday, but that's to be expected. Friday are her days off from work. But Jose does leave Friday morning and then comes back that night carrying gifts. Valentine's Day gifts, I assume. And from there on out, up until Tuesday, when Pam's family and investigators start arriving, the only person seen coming and going from the house is Jose. I mean, there is a mailman and a UPS guy who drops stuff off, but neither of them stick around and definitely don't go into the house.
Okay, hold on. If Jose's waiting outside for Pam on Thursday evening, how is he getting in and out of the house all weekend long when we're pretty sure Pam isn't there?
Well, that's the strange part, right? Like, she should be there. We haven't seen her leave. I mean, the only reason we believe she's not there is that her family hasn't gotten a hold of her, and she's not there now.
Well, and Jose left her a note and that voicemail trying to find her, so
Right.
he knows she's not there.
Yeah.
Does the footage show how he's getting in? Like, is he being let in by someone? The door is just unlocked? Does he have a key?
So in the footage after he's let in by her on Thursday, the rest of the time he's for sure using a key. So he leaves Friday night, he comes and goes on Saturday, comes and goes again on like Monday. Sometimes he's lugging large garbage bags of something.
Oh, whoa, I'm sorry. Lugging large garbage bags?
This traffic report is supported by InvisibleFence.com. West Liberty and Lynn Street, there's a wreck in Warren County. Northbound 75 between State Route 73 and Austin Boulevard, there's a wreck, and it's sitting in the center lane. In Montgomery County, Dayton, Lebanon Pike at East Social Row Road, there's a wreck. From 9 first warning weather, severe thunderstorm watch until midnight for parts of Indiana. Showers and storms tonight, a low of 65, partly cloudy, slight chance of some rain, and 83 tomorrow. It's 86 degrees now. This is 91.7 WVXU.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from BritBox, with a variety of British mysteries available for streaming, including all seasons of Luther, Father Brown, and Silent Witness. Available during Mystery Month at BritBox.com/NPR. From From Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of any size to attract, interview, and hire candidates all from one place. More at Indeed.com/NPR. And from the listeners who support this NPR station.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Elsa Chang.
And I'm Adrian Florio. At a scientific meeting in Amsterdam today, researchers offered hopeful news for people with Alzheimer's. An experimental drug appears to be even better at slowing down the disease than another one that was just approved by the Food and Drug Administration.
The news came at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference. It involved positive results from a large study of the drug donanemab. At a press briefing, the association's chief science officer, Maria Carrillo, offered this reaction.
There is a palpable excitement about what's happening in our field. This decade is already proving to be the decade of Alzheimer's, and I think it will continue to increase and get better from here.
Later, the drug's maker, Eli Lilly, provided detailed results of its study of more than 1,700 people. Dr. Daniel Skravansky is Eli Lilly's head of research and development.
This is the biggest effect that's ever been seen in an Alzheimer's trial for a disease-modifying drug, somewhere in the range of 35% slowing of disease progression.
Another drug called Leqembi or lecanemab had slowed the disease by about 27% in a different group of patients. Leqembi received full approval from the FDA early this month. Skravansky says the new drug, donanemab, worked best in people just beginning to experience problems with memory and thinking.
What we saw is that the ability to slow disease progression was strongest if you catch this disease early.
Donanemab clears sticky amyloid plaques from the brain. And in this study, patients stopped getting monthly infusions of the drug after brain scans showed the plaques were largely gone. Skravansky says the idea was to find out whether patients would continue to benefit even after treatment ended.
And the answer was yes. So it's really exciting to think that this is a drug that can be used in many patients probably for a pretty limited duration, 12 months or less.
Patients on Leqembi, the drug just approved by the FDA, must keep receiving infusions indefinitely. Both drugs can cause swelling or bleeding in the brain. In the donanemab study, brain scans revealed these side effects in about 1 in 4 patients. Skravansky says a few of them also had symptoms like headache or confusion.
So 6% of people on the therapy, they have these imaging abnormalities and then symptoms which could be mild, but in a few patients it was severe, and 3 patients who had these symptoms ultimately died.
The results with both donanemab and Leqembi provide strong evidence that removing amyloid from the brain can slow down Alzheimer's. The successes come after many other amyloid drugs failed to help patients. Dr. Risa Sperling of Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston says one reason the new drugs are working is that they are being started sooner, before the brain has been badly damaged.
I also think we've learned to be more aggressive with dosing, and both these 2 trials really suggest you have to knock down that amyloid from baseline. You have to do it quickly.
But it's still not clear which forms of amyloid drugs should target. Sperling says single amyloid molecules appear to be harmless, but when they start to clump together, they can take on forms that are toxic.
Eventually, lots of amyloid ends up in plaques in the brain. And there's been a debate in our field for 30 years now about whether the plaques themselves are causing the problem.
Donanemab is designed to target plaques specifically. Leqembi, the approved drug, also goes after other forms of amyloid. Yet Sperling says both drugs appear to stave off cognitive decline in patients with early Alzheimer's.
This gives me hope that if you went even earlier, 10 years earlier, you could flatten the curve altogether one day.
A big study to test that idea is already underway. John Hamilton, NPR News.
After more than 5 decades, the Rainbow Push Coalition has a new leader. Yesterday, the Reverend Jesse Jackson stepped down as its president, and now a Dallas minister, Frederick Douglass Haynes III, takes charge of the civil rights organization. NPR's Cheryl Corley reports.
The Rainbow Push Coalition is holding its annual convention, and the group's huge change in leadership officially came yesterday afternoon. Jesse Jackson uses a wheelchair. Aides helped him stand at a church podium, and Jackson led a crowd of dignitaries, Rainbow Push members, and others in his signature chants.
I am somebody. I am somebody. Keep hope alive.
Jackson explained that he was not having anything to do with the R word, retirement, that while he may no longer be in the limelight, he would still be around.
I'm not retiring. I am pivoting to another
pivoting, not retiring. Still a historic moment. And a woman who made history herself, the country's first female vice president, Kamala Harris, called the day a celebration for one of Chicago's greatest patriots.
In his life's work, he has reinforced that no matter who we are or where we come from, we have so much more in common than what separates us.
Jesse Jackson is 81. In late 2017, he announced he has Parkinson's, the neurological disease that affects movement. In many ways, his decision marks the end of an era. Born in Greenville, South Carolina, Jackson became a civil rights activist as a college student and would go on to become a protege of Martin Luther King Jr. He formed Operation Push, People United to Serve Humanity, in 1971. It later became the Rainbow Push Coalition. Its goal, to this day, has been to agitate for a greater share of political and economic power for African Americans and the poor. Jackson has led boycotts of stores, corporations, and numerous voter registration drives. In 1984 and again in 1988, Jackson sought the Democratic nomination for president. John Norris, who served in federal and state roles promoting agriculture, was the Jackson campaign's Iowa director in '88. He says Jackson's focus on farm policy and inclusion won over skeptical white farmers.
Because of how we connected with them and how we connected the economic justice of rural Iowa with urban Chicago.
Jackson didn't become the Democrats' nominee, but he was the first African-American presidential candidate to win major primaries, and the Rainbow Push Coalition gave Jesse Jackson a bully pulpit. He has crisscrossed the globe, spotlighting a plethora of domestic and international problems. In 2000, he received the highest honor a civilian can receive, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. There have been controversies, though, in Jackson's career. In 2001, it became known that he had fathered a child out of wedlock. In 2008, there was a firestorm after he made disparaging remarks about Barack Obama, but later he cheered as Obama won the presidency. Many say it was Jesse Jackson's success changing Democratic Party rules during his groundbreaking campaigns that shaped so much of what was to come.
You know, there is a need for an organization like Rainbow Push.
AIDS activist Ray Lewis Thornton worked as a youth organizer during the Jackson campaigns, and she says many of the problems Jesse Jackson fought against still exist.
I'm just hoping that a new surge of young leaders will come through Push and give it life that it so desperately needs to keep going.
New Rainbow Push CEO, Dallas Minister Frederick Douglass Haynes III, says he will continue to bring young people into the organization and fight for equality, like his mentor, Jesse Jackson, has for so many years.
I stand here on his shoulders because no one with sense would try to stand in his shoes.
Both Haynes and Jackson say there is still much work to do, including fighting the efforts to roll back civil rights victories of the past. Cheryl Corley, NPR News, Chicago.
This is NPR News.
Many ordering screens in businesses encourage tips of 20% or even more, which some workers think is fine.
It's not a tip. It goes to your wage. It's just the amount that the employer does that the employer doesn't have to pay you.
How workers see higher tipping. Tipflation tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News.
Start your Tuesday with Mary Ann Zalesnik and Morning Edition on 91.7 WVXU.
Support comes from Dubworks, located along Madison Road on the east side of Cincinnati. Dubworks is an independent automotive service facility specializing in Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche. Dubworks operates an environmentally friendly shop promoting sustainability and reducing waste. You can discover more or schedule an appointment at dubworks.com. That's DUBWERX.com.
Northbound 71 after Fields, Erdel, Mason, Montgomery Road. There's a wreck. It's on the shoulder. There's also a wreck on West Liberty Street at Lynn Street.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang.
anti-major in Florida. Coming up, Baltimore is seeing wider use of the drug xylazine, which many people are mixing with opioids.
Basically pouring gasoline on the fire by putting these two drugs together in your system at the same time.
What the city is doing to try to keep people safe after these news headlines.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. Russia has halted a wartime deal that has been allowing grain to flow from Ukraine to countries in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, where food insecurity is a growing threat and high food prices have pushed more folks into poverty. Moscow suspended the Black Sea Grain Initiative that was brokered a year ago by the UN and Turkey. The administrator of U.S. aid, Samantha Power, says it's another example of Russia's disregard for human lives and livelihoods. She says she's very concerned about the cost of food in these areas going back up.
Every month since the Black Sea Grain Initiative has been operable, you have seen a steady decrease in cereal prices around the world, and that is not a coincidence.
More than 32 million tons of grain have been exported from Ukraine since last August. Moscow has complained that its own agricultural shipments have faced delays despite shipping a record amount of wheat last year. A federal judge says a lawsuit over Georgia's political maps will go to trial this fall as lawmakers in Alabama are redrawing congressional districts this week after the Supreme Court ruled them unconstitutional. From member station WABE, Sam Greenglass has more.
The lawsuit claims Georgia's maps illegally dilute the power of black voters. The state had unsuccessfully motioned to dismiss the suit without a trial. Now one will begin September 5th. That could result in new maps being ordered, like in Alabama. The Supreme Court ruled that under the Voting Rights Act, Alabama should have drawn 2 majority black congressional districts instead of 1. This was the first redistricting cycle since the Supreme Court struck down pre-clearance, a provision in the Voting Rights Act that required states with a history of discrimination to get voting changes approved first by the U.S. Department of Justice. For NPR News, I'm Sam Greenglass in Atlanta.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. It's 5:33 and 86 degrees in Cincinnati. This is 91.7 WVXU. I'm Bill Reinhardt. Cincinnati officials announced today they'll launch a series of pilot programs designed to address economic inequality. The test efforts include medical debt relief, savings accounts for children, guaranteed basic income, and an initiative providing legal representation for residents in eviction court. Mayor Aftab Purival says the programs are designed to address long-running racial disparities.
The core focus of ours, both the mayor, council, and this administration, has been on addressing this fundamental challenge. Growing economic opportunity with racial equity in the center of the frame, and importantly, centered around ownership.
Purival says the city has spent a year planning the initiatives, from a grant from National Nonprofit Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund. Council approved the funding for the programs in the latest budget. As expected, Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose has entered the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate race. As State House correspondent Joe Ingles reports, his entry comes as he leads a statewide campaign to make it harder to pass future constitutional amendments.
LaRose wants to win the support of Republicans next May, but first he wants Ohioans to approve Issue 1 next month. That